Turns out Kristin didn't set a new record high rating after all due to a PDGA gaffe. Disc Golf Pro Tour CEO says fans can expect sports betting as early as next season. Tour Down Under adds a top 10 player to their roster, and even more this week in disc golf. What's going on, all you disgenerates? They call me Swiss cheese because of all the holes in my game, and I'm also one half of the disc golf world. The nephew and uncle duo YouTube channel that's giving you all your disc golf news on and off the tour, who also just hit 25,000 subscribers, and I want to make sure to thank all of you. The video that you guys are watching is This Week in Disc Golf, where I cover all things disc golf from the past week. Our content continues to grow and develop, including a brand new podcast. Yes, we are doing podcasts now, where we discuss some of our wacky tour adventures from every stop we hit last year. And for even more behind-the-scenes action, make sure to join the Patreon. And while we're at it, shout out to each and every one of you that's on the Patreon page. With all of you, it certainly makes the grind that much easier. It's PDGA ratings week, and the only reason I'm discussing this now as the lead instead of a quick hitter is because the PDGA's latest error that made it a topic. Tuesday opened up with the PDGA's release of the latest ratings, and with it, the community's opportunity to celebrate another milestone of Kristin Tattar dominance as she shattered her previous record highest FPO rating by a single point. As Tattar and many other pros celebrated hers and their latest achievements through social media posts, the PDGA soon realized the mistake, reversing and readjusting the rankings later, all the while bringing most ratings down. Of course, in Monty Python fashion, Tattar's rating dropped her down to merely tie her previous record of 1,000 rated, making this a far larger story. The PDGA mistakenly included the Throw Pink and USDGC ratings, which should never be included, only for multiple years now. Funny enough, because of PDGA's own archaic ruling on the stroke and distance exception, creating this mess far before this latest gaffe. Why the Throw Pink and USDGC ratings are not included in players' ratings when they're out there scoring these numbers in a major is everyone's question, as this error highlights the PDGA's long asinine reasoning. Pros and fans have been long on the side of including the ratings, but simply put, the PDGA gets in its own way once again. Mistakes happen, and I'm certainly glad that this was corrected, but it didn't stop the shade from Tattar and other pros, as she made sure to highlight if this doesn't change again. I even respect PDGA's efforts of trying to have a universal ruling across all levels, despite no one asking for it, and at its core, for an organization, it kinda even makes sense. Certainly for a small, developing organization. Yet the popularity of the pro game, its development of an expanse tour that now includes several nations, that is also broadcast live across the world, simply should not have stats and records for one of its 4 majors excluded, ever. We are only talking about the second largest tournament in prestige of the year. It doesn't make sense to me, you, other current fans, and certainly not the new ones that are lost in this translation. The longer this goes on, the more silly the optics, more chance for errors like this, and the more out of touch the organization appears to its own members. And it just might be more indicative of this sport's old guard leadership desperate to hold on to its control, hindering our sport's growth. Why? Because it's been done that way always, despite our sport still being in its infancy. And the leadership at the top on all levels of the sport just might be the real reason behind why this sport didn't have a longer sustained impact after the COVID boom. CEO Jeff Springs just might try to shift that narrative with the DGBT's desired plans to feature disc golf into the sports betting sphere as soon as this upcoming year. Springs, while on the Pet Cash Pod, a business and sports podcast, during episode 178, would go on to say that the tour's scores and stats technology team, PDGA, and their new relationship with AWS will hope to see sports betting in some states next season. It's understood this divisive debate certainly might be more one-sided than it has ever once been. But if introduced next year, it does have its own risks and plenty of questions surrounding if this is the right timing. Look, after last year's months of PDGA live rollouts we all witnessed, and it's still not being that accurate, those questions are justified. However, if done properly, and I know that might be a very big if, it could help the game in other avenues by getting more eyes on the sport, reinvigorating engagement of your base, endless additional content, and even possibly added participation. Creating some excitement on their own is the Tour Down Under, with 2 more player announcements on an already impressive first wave of players just last week. Adding a 2024 breakout and top 10 player Ezra Robinson, and another young rising player who just podiumed at the latest Q Series, Braden Sides, is making this 5-week Kiwi Tour even more must-watch event during a quiet offseason. Certainly better than any retread CBS Sports repeat. But by bringing in a player of Ezra's caliber in play and recognition, on top of Aaron Gossage and his following, only legitimizes the young tour while still exposing the world to New Zealand disc golf scene and, just as important, its players. With even more possible future players yet to be announced also, I like the direction that these events are going in. Of course, you had the buzz surrounding the Q Series Stop Mary Sunshine House Classic in South Carolina, as the pros playing it commented on just how difficult the course actually was, some going as far as saying the most difficult on the season. And with one of the holes trending nearly 2 strokes above par, helped contribute to the latest Drew Gibson YouTube rant. That being said though, the best round over the 3 days was 2 under. Throw in some poor weather conditions and the numbers climbed. Noah Mensma was able to hold on for his biggest payday of his career and championship for that matter, while young talents rounded out the podium with Paul Krantz taking a second and Braden Sides and Evan Smith tying for third, while Kat Murch completed her South Carolina sweep beating out Paige Shue and Sarah Holcomb. For the Foundation fanboys, listen carefully. No shade to Brody, but simply put, let the pros play. Their attendance only helps garner attention and fans for the tournament, and helps disc golfers from possibly winning career-high purses. These are tournament stops with their own separate payouts that the DGPT throws the Q Series label onto. The false comparison Brody made that it would be like those who qualified for the USDGC playing in the qualifier isn't accurate whatsoever, because that qualifier doesn't have a $5,000 fucking payday, and if it did, more would simply play. The Big Rip in Mississippi showcased a 16-year-old and former junior world champ, Silas, that's with a Y, and trust me it's important later, Williams, take down his first 8 of his career, scoring just 22 under over the final 2 days to beat out Silas, that's with a Y, Schultz by 4, and Matty O by even more. Yes, Williams was playing in his home state, yet still beating established touring pros is an impressive feat. And yet another possible young and up-and-comer may be hitting some tour stops in the future. Over in Texas, you had the National Amateur Disc Golf Championship, heading into the final day where the entire lead card was separated by only 2 strokes. The final day would showcase an absolute back-and-forth battle between 2 Texans, Landon Williams and David Granitz. Between the two, there would be 7 total lead changes, with the 2-stroke swing on 14 being the major difference maker. And on the FPO side, Amy Church was able to beat out Alina Thompson. Now, let's get into some quick hitters from the offseason. The GOAT, Paul Macbeth, decided to take some time to witness yet another GOAT catching some messy magic at an Inter-Miami match. While the other GOAT, Kristin, was busy scoring 2 aces in a round, playing in her first Ultimate game so she could hang out with Ella, and baked not 1 but 2 cakes for an Estonian Father's Day. Don't get me wrong, those cakes certainly look great and all, but how in the hell do you exactly go about cutting that fucking thing? Speaking of baking, Stacy Kiefer kills it over on her baking Instagram with some cinnamon raisin bagels. Those look good enough to eat even without schmear. Ezra Robinson fanboys himself going to the place where he learned how to turn a truck bed into a pool, or the place that made Camo cool again, the Duck Commander Factory. Of course, the standard gym off-season post, these coming from Lucky Lorenzen and Tuomas Huhtinen, but there was one that was a little more special, with Katrina Allen returning to the gym after her first child. The football season is getting interesting, and pros made it known with their support. Scott Withers and AB caught a game, Cynthia Ricciardi gloats on her fantasy team, and even Europeans have gotten into the action while overseas. Bachelor and Bitcoin baddie Ricky Wysocki lives his best off-season life by doing all that and even more in a week. Hitting Scottsdale TPC for golf and some football, attending card shows, opening up a disc golf store, walking around living room ladders, and of course got his cardio in with Jordan Castro and the Scottsdale Run Club. Nobody should be surprised that Madison Walker listens to vinyl. I couldn't imagine sitting there and having to listen about the experience that vinyl gives or the white whale she's in search of, all the while hearing Joni fucking Mitchell playing in the background. Casey White does some trolling of Simon while he celebrates being the highest rated Massachusetts disc golfer. Corey Ellis plays a guitar from the Civil War era. That's kind of fucking wild. Some more Australian photos, social media dumps by the pros playing in the Team World Championship as they hit on all the classics. Beaches, bike rides, kangaroos, and even squirt guns. Owen Scoggins not that far from Australia herself as she returned to her home country of Laos. She is sure as shit owning that shawl though. But it's Gossage who takes the cake for the coolest post of the week with this snow pic. And we can't forget Tina, a disc golf performer in her own right, got sponsored by our boys over at the Courtesy Violation podcast. And guys, that wraps up This Week in Disc Golf. If you've enjoyed and not subscribed, make sure to do so. And if you haven't already, hit that like button, comment, and share.
Can I name players? Is it f***ed up?
I don't know. I'm not going to lie. I really wanted to come into this, stop hating it.
Because at some point we needed to address the titles, and we're going to do it now. I don't think I ever told you this.
No, what's that? In this week's podcast, we crash at my catfish uncle's house, everything surrounding the first stop on the DGBT tour,